I've been exploring Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth for over a year and a half now, and during this time, I've discovered all sorts of weird and interesting things. From rendering and gameplay mechanics to out-of-bounds exploration, these games contain a vast amount of hidden secrets that are just waiting to be found. So here's 10 minutes of useless information about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. In no particular order, we'll start things off with the opening Nibelheim flashback sequence. We see the armored truck with Cloud and Sephiroth inside, driving alongside a mountainous road. But where are they? There isn't exactly a road like this to be found in the Nibelheim region. Well, if we pull the camera back, we'll see that this entire area is disconnected from the actual Nibelheim region, and the truck is literally just driving in circles on an island in the sky. During the monster encounter, if you break past the invisible barrier with Sephiroth, you can actually run along the road in both directions. And while you're not allowed to run the entire circle, you can actually travel a good distance on both sides. Oh, and as for Calm, that's a total lie during the flashback sequence. You aren't really in the grasslands here. You're just in a version of Calm floating above in the Nibelheim region, and this is a pretty common thing to see in this game. Here's a fun fact. Did you know that Moogle Emporiums glow in the dark? Because I didn't, and as far as I'm aware, you don't get to see these Emporiums at night, so maybe this will be something we get to see in FF7 Revelation. For some reason, if Cloud gets too close to the Highwind, he literally nopes out of existence.
Nope.
I don't know why he does this. He just does. Oh, and the game can also sometimes crash when this happens too.
How neat is that?
The opposite can be said if Cloud gets too close to the Condor. The Condor disappears instead. He's probably just shy. When Cloud backs off, he comes back. Now I'm going to make a claim here and say that Cosmo Canyon is a total farce. It's nothing but smoke and mirrors. And these outer canyons, they're not going to make it into the next game. And here's why. When you're in an elevated area, you can clearly see the canyon stretch in all directions. And it looks pretty damn good, not gonna lie. But when you're down below, you just assume that those canyons are still there. But that's actually not the case. They disappear, and then you're able to see how this region actually connects with the larger world. And if we take an elevator, we can easily see when the canyons transition in. If you're paying attention, you can even see the Cosmo Canyon Observatory from Gungaga. While this is in a low polygonal state, this world layout looks to be correct. And if we look at the latest Revelation reveal trailer, you can see from this shot that the outer canyons are no longer visible. If you go past the reef barrier with the tiny Bronco, you can actually continue driving around the ocean on the other side. However, because this is out of bounds, you need to stay close to the reef, because if you go too far, you eventually start falling through the map. And that's not very fun. Most of us are probably aware that the heavy fog in the Meridian Ocean is effectively just a loading screen between different regions. But did you know that if you drive slow and careful enough between Junon and Costa del Sol, you can actually load both regions in at once? And this really just helps put in perspective just how little distance there is between the two regions. In fact, if we want to get technical, it's only about 5 miles between Junon and the Corel region. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. We'll be exploring the total world size in a future video. And Junon is only about 4.1 miles from Costa del Sol, which means that you could see the city from Costa del Sol's beaches with no problem. Have you ever wondered what Kate Sith's Moogle Fortune readout looks like? We never get to see it displayed in-game, but I think it looks like some kind of brochure. Okay, here's a silly one. During the boardroom meeting between Rufus and his directors regarding weapons, the developers forgot to add a door to the room. And this is just something you can see during the cutscene if you're paying attention. And this boardroom? You're not really in the Shinra building. You're just in a gray box floating in the sky above the Corel region. After you defeat Scarlet at the ruined Gungaga reactor, if you return and look inside the blown-out dome, you can find Scarlet and her Crimson Mare Mark II floating above. They're flipped on their sides at 90 degrees, and Scarlet's position is offset from the Crimson Mare's seat. It looks kinda ridiculous. And if you look inside the Mako pool below, you'll even find a weapon just hanging out. I'm assuming that these are just assets that were forgotten to be cleaned up after this section is completed, because they don't appear until that sequence has ended. And have you ever wondered where Seto's resting place actually is? Well, it turns out it's actually not outside. Instead, it's directly below the main bridge going into Cosmo Canyon. Do you remember that thing I said about smoke and mirrors here? Sorry to ruin the illusion. Before sneaking into the Junon parade, the party needs to put on Shinra uniforms. Then, we see what looks like Tifa and Aerith dressing into their disguises, with only their feet visible. Now, I'm not sure if I can show this, but if we look underneath the doors, we can see that they are actually completely naked. Here's something more interesting. If Cloud gets too close to Midgar, a second one appears on top of the original one, and it doesn't appear to happen if you bring other party members close. My only logical guess is that by raising it up a bit, it makes it more easily visible when you drive by with the tiny Bronco. And if you're curious, this duplicate is raised by approximately 295 feet and pushed forward by about 192 feet. I bet that's something you didn't expect to know. After defeating Dyne and before fighting the Inuran Suppressor, did you know that Palmer is actually shown inside his tank at all times? Because normally, you'd expect his model not to be here to save on resources, and this game usually does a good job at saving resources where it can. And here's the path the buggy takes during the minigame where Barrett is fighting off Shinra troops. There's 3 different phases, starting with just the biker unit, then a helicopter, and then finally the Inuran Suppressor, with each phase sharing the same circular path. The only oddity about this sequence is that the developers actually hide the gold saucer and the junkyard where we fight Dyne. My only logical guess as to why this was done was to make the minigame's track path seem larger with a more generic rocky background. Otherwise, you'd see the gold saucer and the junkyard after every single loop, and that would probably feel more repetitive than just some boring old rocks. Either way, I thought that this was an interesting find. Did you know that you can get access back to the village of the Gi by saying a simple command?
Open Sesame!
I'm obviously joking about that last part. However, if you were able to get back to the lake at the bottom of this entrance, you won't find the boat there, but you can actually swim across the entire lake. There are a few invisible walls that you run into, and if you can get past them, you can make it all the way back to the village of the Gi. And since we originally get here by a cutscene, it does make me wonder if at some point during development, we may have had the opportunity to return here later if we wanted. And while you're here, if you decide to visit the altar again that's at the top of the village, you won't find any enemies to fight, but you can find Gi Natak just hanging out by the altar.
What's he doing?
He's just standing there, menacingly!
When you are entered into the Chocobo Cup for Gus, the rest of the party is put in a jail cell as collateral. But when you enter the Chocobo Racer's Lounge, the party apparently gets moved, because if you look behind this door as soon as you walk off the elevator, you'll find that they're all right there, just hanging out in an empty room. I honestly don't have an explanation for this one. Once you make it to the inside of the Temple of the Ancients, if you decided to backtrack back outside for some reason, you can actually see the inside of the temple on the outside. And you can't see the whole temple here. This is basically up to the dragon boss fight room. More sections of the temple are loaded in after that boss fight is completed. When you return to Nibelheim later in the game, the southern ascent is blocked off by a large fence, and if you go past it, you'll find that none of the terrain from the Nibelheim flashback sequence is loaded in. However, some assets are still loaded in from the flashback, such as boxes and even elevators. And in fact, if you could even somehow get to these elevators in-game, they still remain functional. This particular elevator only goes down and up once though.
That's pretty neat.
Now, with only about 1 minute left, let's see how many more of these we can bang away. This is how Cloud looks while holding the gun in the pirate ship minigame. And this is what he looks like while aiming. The tiny Bronco can drive on land, and it's way faster than a Chocobo. You can even do sick jumps with it. Did you know that the dead people under the tarps are Gold Saucer employees? But they're faking it. These characters can be found again at the main desk at the Battle Arena. Whenever the game has a first-person view of someone, especially while showing their hands, the character's head model is bent backwards like some sort of possessed demon. And this is done to make sure that the head model doesn't get in the way of the shot. At the end of Chapter 12, when you talk to Cid, a cutscene plays that takes place in Junon. If you didn't initiate the cutscene in the Junon region, a copy of Junon is created for this cutscene in whatever region you are in. You can also see parts of Junon missing if the cutscene plays in a different region. It kinda reminds me of the missing door of the Shinra conference room. And Cloud looks cool as hell opening the doors to the Shinra Manor.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Now, as a bonus for sticking around to the very end, here's what's actually happening in the Junon dressing rooms for Tifa and Aerith. And no, they're not actually naked. The character models are basically the same, but without them wearing shoes. They also play unique animations of them undressing. Tifa even plays an animation where she takes off her shirt. And if you're interested in more useless information, be sure to check out my other videos, where I measure buildings and other things in FF7's universe. And with that, thank you all so much for watching. If you liked the video, give it a like and consider subscribing. It helps the channel grow and tells me you'd want to see more content like this in the future. And what was your favorite fact from this video? Leave me a comment, I'd really like to know. So you all take care of yourselves. Bye for now.